What it do, what it be? Today I have an interesting eBay find here. While perusing the depths of eBay listings and finding myself lost in my usual what can I work on trends, I stumbled upon an auction of a lot of broken GPUs. My lucky day. A bunch of untested GPUs to practice soldering on seemed fun, so I bidded and won, surprisingly. The best part of this auction? Only $20 of shipping to pay. What a steal, in my humble opinion. But here's what was even more surprising. I waited and the lot arrived in record time, 2 days, which is crazy for someone who made no money off of this. Like, the guy got nothing out of it. Usually they take their sweet time to get to the shipping center to drop it off. But this guy wanted this stuff out. Some autumn cleaning, I guess. But anyways, I'm not one to look a gift horse in the mouth. So I unpacked the GPUs, in which they sat for an entire day. You're wondering, why did they sit for a day? Well, if you're like me and work a morning shift, you know. And if you don't know, well, stay tuned. Once I got done with my morning shift, took my adult nap, and I finally had time to work on these, to the Testbench they all went, and unsurprisingly, most of them were broken. Wouldn't even turn on. A 760 dead. A 660 Ti EVGA edition dead. Okay, that's fine, you know, they're pre-practice on. Did get a 660 who liked to post, but did not like to install drivers on it. That might be able to be fixed with the new BIOS installed on it, but that's another video, maybe. The summary of that is, only one of those GPUs worked, and you would not believe which one it was. That's right, it was 270X, today's topic. And the brand was a Vision Tech, which is very uncommon. It was a no-name brand, really. You see them every once in a while. And I mean, I don't hate it. It's a nice black shroud, good-looking fans, and a Canadian sticker? So this car has gotten around from our brothers and sisters in the colder climates of Canada to the hotter, more temperate climate of the States. So it's got some age to it, and it's got some wear and tear to it as well. Let's start with the release date, which was on October 8th, 2013. The 270X has over a decade on it, and really nobody mentions this card. It doesn't get a lot of relevant posts about it, it's not mentioned, partially due to the non-existing driver support, as well as it being the low end of that line of cards. The details include it has a 2GB VRAM cache of GDDR5, which, hey, pretty norm, and worked for 2013 pretty well. A launch price of $199 pre-tax for my fellow States brothers and sisters. Lastly, it was built on GCN1, so it was really just a refresh of the 7870 with a hard overclock and partial DX12. Keep that in mind as it'll be important later in the video. So now that we have all the basic details out of the way, all the nitty gritty, what is the point of this video, you may be asking? Well, is the 270X 2GB obsolete e-waste? Or is there still things people can enjoy on a $20 7870 refresh? Might shock you what I managed to get out of this card to run, even with its outdated drivers. Alright, starting off strong with Dead Island 2. My friend and I actually have a candid history, and so we did a little walk and talk while I played. I started off with low settings with FSR set to balance. The muddy textures are kind of an eyesore, but when they don't look like an early Gmod build, it actually is very playable. The weapons are fun, the game is fun, and the frame times are good enough that you won't even notice that it's kind of stuttering. There are micro stutters. You may notice it most when you have a bunch of enemies at once with a bunch of effects, for say the electricity and zapping them. That does seem to have a little bit of a drop, but it's a minuscule drop, so you know, enjoy it. This game came out in 2023, so it's a pretty good contender for a card that's 12 years old, and I think anybody could enjoy this. Epic gave it out, so that's always cool. Running it back, here's a scene where the water ripple effects seem to really hamper the card. In the house, we're getting 60, a little bit to the 50s. As soon as we start going outside, it hits 40s, and as soon as it gets a whiff of that water, bam, down to 30s. So those kind of effects seem to hit AMD cards. I mean, there's no drivers, so it makes sense. So more modern like rendering technologies like ambient occlusion, volumetric fog, global illumination, and last but not least, shaders in the modern gaming scene do hamper these cards due to driver optimization. Alright, and to cap this one off, I think you should stick to the low preset. With FSR set to balance seems to be the sweet spot. You could go to performance, but I think it's already kind of looking bad, so you might want to stick to that. Up next is a game I hold very dear to my heart, Monster Hunter World, released January 26, 2018. I'm running it on the all low preset. There is no presets on this actually. I just made it up, but it's essentially what a low preset would be. Low, everything. There's no scaling. They didn't do that in 2018. It was just for the scaling plague that really ruined texture pop-in with FSR and DLSS. And it's running pretty well. We're getting an average of 74, a minimum of 65, and only a 1% of 66, which is interesting seeing it's higher than a minimum, but that's just a little margin of error. The footage you're actually seeing is very cut down because I was playing way too much of it. My friends actually made quite a few comments about how I just wanted an excuse to play it. They might be right. And I wanted to try the medium preset because I think that's where it really shines. So I did loaded that up, and that's essentially the same as the low preset. Bunch of medium settings, most of it was set to medium. No DLSS, no FSR. That's not even a setting you look at. VSync is off. I think this is where the game really shines. You're getting quality and performance with an average of 54, a max of 67, a 1% of 42, which doesn't really feel that bad. The frame time graph shows that. And it feels nice. It's Monster Hunter. Like, you could enjoy it on this card. I could fully see myself playing it on this card. I wouldn't go to high just to keep the frame time good, no stutters and stuff, because some of these matches you want to do, like later Kushala Deora is a kind of a FPS issue. But this game is beautiful on this card. Even with 2 gigs of VM, it's maxing it out at 2.5 out of the 199, and yet it's still not stuttering. Like, usually that would stutter your card. You have micro stutters. There's not a single stutter. It was fairly smooth, and even if you do see a little bit, you don't feel it. The input's still there. It's almost like the visuals are glitching, but the inputs and actual movements are still there. And that's what's kind of nice with these older games. They didn't have that issue where you would hard stutter, and then you'd wait for the texture and everything to catch up. Like, frame gen really does cause this input lag that we just put up with. Unfortunately, Kestrons had to die for this, so you guys could see this, but they were probably happy to do it. This is a great benchmark for this card. This card really does favor this game. Like, I could see a lot of people playing this if they had not a lot of cash on hand or they wanted a budget build. I would suggest this game to people. There's still players, it's still lively. A lot of people even go back, there's mods, there's everything you need to keep this game fresh in your mind and have a good night with friends. I used to grind hours with friends, and this game made it easy. Alright, up next is Rimworld. I wanted to test and see how a lower end game that runs on most hardware would do, and honestly, it's pretty good. We got a 60 with an average of 58. The minimums and the 1% low are probably very specific situations. You probably won't see it often. I wanted to test the raid, but I got more addicted to just building my base first, making my death box. This is on version 1.6, the newest version, so there are more cores being used. Prior versions might have you using 1 core, which did hamper quite a bit of performance during bigger raids, especially like breachers. I would call this game very fun. Addictive war crimes is another term I'd use for this game. You can play it on anything. It's great for laptops. It's good for your Steam OS. You know, my Steam Deck users. They just had the 12th anniversary, so go check out the deals. They're on sale. And just have fun with it. This is a good game for most games. On to the next one. Up next we have Fallout 4. High settings. Choose the highest settings to get a feel for how it would run during big battles with lots of explosions, fires, and shots. While shooting up the death pod, I noticed the frame rate was okay. We got around 56 with an average of 59 and a max of 62. But the 1% shows 30, and that was most likely from the car I shot that exploded right beforehand. The minimum quest is a really good start, and it gives you a very good idea of what you're going to be working with the rest of the game. As I said before, we are on the high preset of Fallout 4. There is a cap on the engine due to Bethesda's game engine choice. They won't give up on it. They will never give up on it. The creation engine is here to stay, apparently. They did try to do Unreal for a little bit, though I hear Oblivion Remastered still has mod support, but I don't think it'll ever make it to the same degree as the creation engine. But back to what we were talking about. The game runs well. I would play this. You could play this on this card. You know, this is a 2GB VRAM card, so it's running this pretty well for what it is. And 2 years after its release, you could enjoy this game very easily on this card. And that's really all I should have to say, but there is more. Next we tried Ultra on it, and the frame rate actually was a little worse, but not really that much different. One weird thing you'll notice is the 1% low is higher, and I think that's due to something happening in the first clip that kind of brought it down, probably some weird little bug for a second. At the end of the day, it's a margin of error, but this is the Ultra settings. It runs a little worse. You get about 6 or 7 frames off, but still playable, especially if that 1% low is better, so you wouldn't even feel that one if you ignore that initial clip stutter. That is. Lastly, after comparing the two results, it's 5. It is 5 whole frames difference, so I would just play on Ultra. If you really need that 60, go down to medium, or stick it high. Older Bethesda games favored CPUs over GPUs, so it really depends on what CPU you choose to pair with this GPU. I chose this 1400 I thought it was a good companion, and it's really proven itself. 4-core, 8 threads with this 270X kind of rips through a lot of these games. Like I'm playing Ultra on Fallout 4, as you can see. Skyrim kind of dips, and Skyrim Anniversary seems to use more GPU, and you'll see that soon. Skyrim Anniversary Edition is here, and I have quite a history with this game. Be it the first time playing it at a whopping whole 7 FPS on a Radeon 4200. Oh, the days. Integrated graphics via an Athlon 2 250X. I still remember it. It sucked. But showed the most dedicated gamers is the ones with mountains of patience. Also, I kind of want to do a video on my original gaming PC, the Dell Inspiron 570 mid tower. Let me know what you guys think. I have to kind of source it, but I'd definitely be down to find one of those. Moving on, the game seems to run well at the high preset. Average is below 60, but the drops aren't noticeable. I seem to have made beef with a local hunter, and in turn, met him into the roast he was meant to be. Which is onto my PSA. If a man comes running at you with fire in his hands, you should probably duck. Next is Ultra, and I started off right in the heart of battle with multiple people to stress the GPU. We can see the VRAM is maxed at 1.98 gigabytes of the 2 gigabytes that the 270X had. It was maxed at high, but the game clearly wants to push past the 270X's limits. But sadly, this is a different reality, because that would never be achieved. Womp womp womp. But what is achievable, you ask? Oh my viewer, I show you peak gaming at a crisp 30 FPS. That's right, 30 FPS. Something most budget games will happily play all day, every day. Let's try a multiplayer game next. Battlefield 5, being a more CPU-bound game, plus its relatively good optimization, lets us see the lows at a golden standard 60 frames per second. With a higher max, the 1% lows do show there is some stutter. However, despite the 1% lows, this game is very smooth, and it's still a lot of fun to play. Medic Grease Gun is a blast. Honestly, it feels like 2019 was the last year of optimized games being normal. Post 2022 Cyberpunk games, optimization was a thing of the past. Up next is a game you could not escape in 2023. Baldur's Gate 3 comes running in at the low preset. It's not gonna please anybody with those low numbers. 37 average with the low as bad as 2. That's right, 2. No clue on what caused that, but there was no stuttering in this whole battle. You could very much play this and be happy till Act 3 hit. That's right, Act 3 has quite the bad optimization. They've applied some patches, but no real fix is ever made. You could enjoy this game with friends, given you had to. But an R9 290X at the very least, I think would make it a much better experience. Now we hit Borderlands 3. Using the built-in benchmark, we can see the 270X runs this game pretty well, which some may look back on, as the recent Borderlands 4 release of reviews critical of the performance. But at low, the 270X runs at around 48 average, with another 1% low below 30 or even 20. This does seem to indicate the VRAM does hold you back with this card, as the card struggles to keep up with the textures. You could still play this, and I think the next game will really show you what good optimization can do for these older cards. Next, let's try the medium preset. It seems to stay in the 30s, which is good for any budget gamer who doesn't mind not being at the golden standard of 60. However, jumping around and shooting any kind of rocket, maybe a little stutter coming at you like a little bug on your windshield. But, just like that bug, it can be wiped away and forgotten. Now for a game that was mentioned prior, Doom 2016, almost 3 years apart, October 8th compared to May 5th in release date. The 270X runs the high preset like it was designed for it. Doom recommends a 970 from NVIDIA or a 290 non-X 4GB. A really good example of games recommended asking for more than it really takes, as the 270X maintains constant 60 frames with a 1% low in the 30. Huzzah! Our first one! I really need to catch on my Doom skills, as I'm matching mock grandma speeds at best, if I'm being honest. This is also one of the few games still calling for a FX 8350, which my 1400 smokes, but that's no surprise, with Ryzen single core performance boost and simultaneous multi-threading, giving Doom an extra 4 cores to work with over a 2300X, for example. I'll be doing a video on the 1400X to compare to my prior video. The 2300X. Does SMT really matter, and should the 1400 be looked as a budget option? Stay tuned. The last game we'll be testing, Fortnite in performance mode, runs relatively well, despite the non-performance mode being known for being particularly hard to run smoothly on even the the newer hardware. The 270X runs with an average of 89, with the dips mostly being due to the first match. Apparently once the game loads the shaders mid-match, it runs a lot smoother. I stayed around this building getting a feel for the card while it loaded. Honestly, the card is a refresh of the 7070, so keep your opinions in mind, which was the GPU the PS4 AP was compared to, so it kind of all makes sense when you put it like that, right? I don't particularly play these Battle Royale games anymore. I started with PUBG, met some real oddballs I call friends to this day from 2017. We got addicted to Warzone when it was a fresh and fun still. Looking at you, Mono Warzone, it's not fun. Crazy how the times have changed though. Average seems to be up to 100 after the load with a low of 26, so maybe not everyone will want to take the risk in a competitive shooter, but for only $20 for a GPU, it's a price and performance you can't beat. So at this point I had tested a bunch of games. I got curious about what overclocking would be like, as these cards were overclocked quite often. So I pushed the core to 1215, a decent overclock. Most people can get it a little higher than maybe like 1240. And I pushed the memory to 1550. Also modest overclock on the memory. Most people get that up to 1300 depending on the card you use. My Vision Tech wasn't built for that kind of work, so those are my overclocks. Or should I say, were my overclocks. I proceeded to use 3D Mark to kind of push it while I could put it in Windows so I could test it as it was going to see if it needed to be changed. And I'll let the video talk for itself what ended up happening. So at this point, the worst had happened. I had ruined my config for my Windows OS drive, my benchmarking drive, now corrupt. I, of course, looked up some guides and Googled how to fix this bad config, to which I found a little article and I went through it. I'm not going to show you the process of me typing all that in. Just know it didn't end up working. It never fixed it. I did all the partitioning and everything. I just could not fix that drive. So here's a little montage of me taking out the drive, using one of these nice little enclosures you can get off Amazon for like under $10 when they're on sale. Really convenient for these kind of things. I highly suggest you get one. Like I said, under $10. You get a wire that's USB-A to Type-C. And bam, you can pull out your old drive, format it like I'm about to show you, and put in all the old user data back in. So you can save your passwords, your info. You'll still have to install your programs, but that's minuscule for what you could lose. So here's the whole process of me breaking down the PC, taking out that drive, putting it in the enclosure, backing up the user data. Reinstalling Windows to, you guessed it, yet again, start overclocking. And I succeeded this time with a 1210 on the core and 1540 on the memory, stable on 3D Mark. I would later then test it, which I will show you on Skyrim to show you the difference. So in Skyrim with the overclocked, I spent hours of troubleshooting to achieve, and what did my efforts give? Not much. It was a fruitless endeavor, but it was a fun experience to try. I should really get back into overclocking my GPUs. So at stock we got an average of 31 with a max of 32. With an 1185 core and a 1220 mem overclock, we got an average of 32 with a max of 35. So 1 extra average and 3 extra max. And lastly, the highest overclock I achieved for stable gameplay was a 1215 core overclock and a 1235 mem overclock. And with that, we achieved a whopping 3 extra on the average, and the same for the max at 38. So it seems overclocking didn't really give it much. It got us to a high 38, so I guess you wouldn't stutter as much, but even the 1% shows the same. It showed no difference on the 1%, which is what really matters for that. So at the end of the day, there's no point. Conclusion FAQ. So that's the end, and I gotta say, it was an interesting look at what this card could handle and what it even was as far back as 2016 when it still had relevancy. It's definitely showed its age in some games like Baldur's Gate 3, but did well in others like Dead Island, Doom, and Battlefield. I would like to eventually go through its brother in arms, the 280X, and being a refresh of the prior 7000 series. With the 285, 290, and last the 290X as well, the only non-refresh, the R9 200 series. FAQ. Who could benefit from this card? People who only spend $20, want to play older titles, and cannot find any Pascal or Maxwell cards locally. Would I daily this? Definitely no. I have plenty of other options to choose from at that price point. Examples being the 1050 to 970 can found locally. Even RX 570s can often be found for about $25. What will be the fate of this card? She's going to go to my little showcase when I get my office running, if I ever get my office running. And I think I'll just keep them like shown. You might see in the back. Stay tuned.